Hey there, and welcome to another Brexit Explained video. In this video, we're going to talk about the vote that was held in the House of Commons last night. Before we dive into that vote and what it means for Brexit, I'd encourage you to check out our new podcast, Too Long Didn't Read. The first episode will be coming out this afternoon, and we'll be discussing the vote in more detail, as well as what other Brexit-related things you can expect to happen over the next couple of weeks. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can find it by searching for Too Long Didn't Read, or by searching for TLDR News. Because we're posting the first episode this afternoon and it's a brand new show, it's possible you might struggle to find it in your podcast app immediately. If you can't find it right now, we'll be posting the full episode on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel, and we'll be keeping our website up to date to let you know where you can subscribe. There's a link to all of that in the description down below. Anyway, on to last night's vote. Wait, hold up. Before we even get to the vote, there was some other major news. Remember in yesterday's video we spent ages talking about Johnson's majority of 1 MP? Well, midway through the Prime Minister's statement to the House of Commons about the G7 summit, one of his MPs defected from the Conservatives to join the Liberal Democrats.
And restoring our independent seat in the WTO for the first time in 46 years. I wish my honourable friend all the best.
Order! Resume your seat. Thank you, Prime Minister. Order! I ask the House to have some regard to how our proceedings are viewed by people outside the chamber. I will always facilitate the expression of opinion by this House. Order! Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is making a statement, and that statement should be heard.
Philip Lee said that he was leaving the party due to manipulation, bullying and lies. He also stated that this Conservative government is aggressively pursuing a damaging Brexit in unprincipled ways. It's putting lives and livelihoods at risk unnecessarily, and it's wantonly endangering the integrity of the United Kingdom. His departure means that Johnson's Conservatives no longer have a majority in the House of Commons, even with the support they get from the DUP. Now, this section of the video was filmed before the votes actually took place, so before we look at the result of the vote, let's discuss what they were actually voting on. An absolute top-level TLDR summary is that MPs were voting to take control of business in the House of Commons. This means that they could schedule a vote on legislation which would force Boris Johnson into asking the EU for an extension to the Article 50 deadline. This is only the very first step of the process, with this vote on an emergency motion. Emergency motions essentially allow MPs to take control of parliamentary business, meaning that if the opposition and rebels do win the vote, then they can take control of parliamentary business. The plan is that once they've taken control of Parliament, they can debate new legislation which will prevent a no-deal Brexit. This proposed legislation includes forcing Boris Johnson to request an extension to the Article 50 deadline, pushing Brexit back to the 31st of January or a different date agreed by the EU and MPs. The government don't like this move, and they see it as an attempt to turn Johnson's government into a puppet government. As such, the government has threatened to hold a general election if MPs vote to support this emergency motion. Now, Johnson can't call an election on his own. 2/3 of MPs need to also sign off on the election, which likely means getting Labour's backing. But Johnson hoped that the threat of an election would deter potentially rebellious MPs within his own party. So, back to the vote itself. As I said, this section of the video was recorded before any of this has actually happened. So let's talk about what we can expect to happen on Tuesday evening. At about 6:30, the opposition parties and Tory rebels will request an emergency debate, and it's up to Speaker John Bercow to allow or disallow the debate.
Thank you. Order. I now call the Right Honourable Gentleman to propose a debate on a specific and important matter that should have urgent consideration. The Right Honourable Gentleman has up to 3 minutes in which to make his application. Sir Oliver Letwin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can be brief. In the light of the government's decision to prorogue the Parliament next week, it has become an urgent matter for Parliament to discuss, in particular for this House to discuss, whether it can accept a no-deal exit. And I therefore am asking you to grant an urgent debate under Standing Order 24 about that matter.
And I am satisfied that the matter is proper to be discussed under the terms of Standing Order number 24.
The debate will then take place shortly after, with MPs getting the chance to discuss the motion.
Sir Oliver Letwin.
The first fact is that over the last 6 weeks, the government has not produced a single indication of any viable proposal to replace the backstop by any alternative likely to prove acceptable to the EU. The likelihood of the government reaching a deal at the Council meeting on the 17th and 18th of October is accordingly slight. I don't say it's easy to do by the 31st of January, but I am sure that it will not be done by the 31st of October. We are between a rock and a hard place, and in this instance, the hard place is better than the rock. It is as simple as that. It's decision time.
Voting to block no deal will not kill the positive momentum in Brexit negotiations, because there is no momentum in the Brexit negotiations to kill. What we're asking MPs today to do is rule out playing Russian roulette with this country's future. This bill is about preventing a damaging no deal which this government has no mandate for and for which there is very little public support. The bill is designed purely to provide vital breathing space to find an alternative way through the Brexit mess this and the previous government have created. If we do not act today, we may not get another chance. Whether people voted leave or remain, they did not vote to shut down democracy.
Rees-Mogg took issue with the fact that Bercow had allowed the motion to be tabled.
I wish to talk about Erskine May, and this sets out, Mr. Speaker, your role and the chief characteristic attached to the office of Speaker in the House of Commons are authority and impartiality. And it would be disorderly, wrong, and not my intention to question your impartiality. Accepting somebody's impartiality is not the same as accepting their infallibility.
But Bercow shot back using Johnson's favourite catchphrase against Mogg.
It is in conformity with that practice that I have operated. I have taken advice. I have sought to exercise my judgment to facilitate the legislature. I have done it, I am doing it, and I will do it to the best of my ability, without fear or favour. To coin a phrase, come what may, do or die. The Leader of the House.
Then, at around 10 PM, a division will be called, and MPs will get the chance to vote on the matter. So, let's take a look at what happened during the vote, and I'll be back in the morning to explain exactly what it means for Brexit.
The question is the motion as on the paper. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. Division! Clear the lobby. Order. Order.
The ayes to the right, 328. The noes to the left, 301.
So the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Unlock. Of course, point of order, the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me no doubt, Mr. Speaker, about the consequences of this vote tonight. It means that Parliament is on the brink of wrecking any deal that we might be able to strike in Brussels, because tomorrow's bill would hand control of the negotiations to the EU. And since I refuse to go along with that plan, we are going to have to make a choice. I don't want an election, the public don't want an election, but if the House votes for this bill tomorrow, the public will have to choose who goes to Brussels on October the 17th to sort this out and take this country forward. And that would be the only way to resolve this, and I can confirm that we are tonight tabling a motion under the Fixed Term Parliament Act.
I welcome tonight's vote. We live in a parliamentary democracy. We do not have a presidency, but a Prime Minister. Prime Ministers govern with the consent of the House of Commons, representing the people in whom the sovereignty rests. There is no consent in this House to leave the European Union without a deal. There is no majority for no deal in the country. As I've said before, if the Prime Minister has the confidence in his Brexit policy, he should put it before the people in a public vote. He wants to table a motion for a general election. Fine, get the bill through first in order to take no deal off the table.
What just happened was nothing short of extraordinary. Once again, the government has lost ability to govern today, after a majority of 27 MPs passed a motion which strips the government of the ability to control the order paper from 3 PM today. Yesterday started with Johnson losing his majority and ended in true Johnsonian flair, with 21 Tory MPs losing the whip and voting against their own party. They will no longer be allowed to stand as Conservative MPs in the next election, and they have effectively been thrown out from the party. The Tory party is once again in all-out civil war over Europe. So why did MPs vote to give themselves control of the order paper? Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, they're going to use the time to try and pass a backbench bill which would compel the Prime Minister to send a letter to Donald Tusk requesting an extension until the 31st of January. This is something Johnson emphatically said that he would not do, and we'll be uploading a video on this bill and the vote on it soon. Following on from our video about Johnson's strategy, losing this vote is possibly an integral part of that plan. By losing the vote, Johnson has the justification to reluctantly move for a general election, an election which Johnson hopes will allow him to consolidate his position. Because of this, on hearing the result, the Prime Minister announced that he tabled a motion under the Fixed Term Parliament Act for an early general election. An early dissolution motion requires 2/3 of all MPs to pass, and it's unlikely to do so, with Labour MPs hesitant to back an early election. As you heard Corbyn say earlier, they don't want to back an election until the bill to compel the extension has passed.
Get the bill through first in order to take no deal off the table.
This is because there's some concern that Johnson could change the election date until after the deadline, causing the UK to leave without a deal by default. So Labour want the extension in place to give them the assurances that this won't happen. Failing to reach the threshold isn't a deal breaker though. The government could still table a bill along the lines of notwithstanding anything from the Fixed Term Parliament Act, the next election will be on X date, and it would only need a simple majority to pass. With the clock ticking down to Halloween, a more determined government, and a governing party in open civil war, the upcoming general election will be explosive. It may not only determine how the UK leaves the EU, but also if it leaves, and if politics is realigned on a leave-remain axis. So buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. If you want to be kept up to date along the way, then be sure to subscribe to our channel. Also, you can hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a video. And if you want to find more from TLDR, you can find us across all social networks simply by searching for TLDR News. And if you want your name at the end of the videos, just like these people, then be sure to back us on Patreon. There's a link to that in the description.